I think that all of the news aggregators, and I use all of the ones that you mentioned, are not actually aggregating. They are collecting, but they aren't actually aggregating in the way that Particle is aggregating. Particle is a true aggregator in that it is taking multiple sources and actually aggregating them into a story.
Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Pachal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in the future. This week, I'm excited to talk to Sara Beykpour. Sara is the CEO of Particle, which is a news app that makes heavy use of AI. And as we talk about on the pod, it's an aggregator in the true sense of the word. Instead of giving you just a pile of stories from various feeds, Particle assembles all those stories into a single summary, and it breaks out the most important facts and analyzes the trend for bias. It can also elevate the raw material that's making news in the first place, whether that's a tweet or a movie trailer. Particle's hardly the first news aggregator app, but although many of those have failed, the massive growth of AI is creating a new opportunity in the space. AI is undoubtedly altering how people are getting news, putting more and more power into users' hands to shape their own experiences. Sarah and I talk about the whole idea of liquid content, where, say, you take a text article that takes a half hour to read and turn it into a podcast you can listen to in 8 minutes or even five. We also explore news agents when users start sending robots to go out and get their news for them. If you're looking for a guide to rethinking the news as a product, this is definitely the podcast for you. Oh, and yes, the OG AI news app, Artifact, that does come up. I hope you find the conversation interesting. And if you do, I'd encourage you to share it with a friend or a colleague. I'd also be grateful if you'd consider subscribing to the Media Copilot newsletter if you haven't already. Also, two more quick notes. One, I'm offering a monthly class on AI for beginners. It's only 60 minutes, and like everything I do, it's focused on practical takeaways for media professionals, people in journalism, PR, or communications. And it's only $49. Each one's a live class, so it's always up to date, and I guarantee you'll walk away with something you can apply to your day to day. You can sign up at mediacopilot.ai. Also, for deeper, more comprehensive training, I'm offering two extended courses in the fall. Each one of these lasts 6 weeks, and one is for journalists, and the other is for PR and comms. These are loaded with lessons on things like deep research, how to automate workflows, and building your own AI agent. There's tons of live workshopping, plus, you get to do a project that's personalized for you. So you're guaranteed to upgrade the way you work. You can sign up for those classes at where else? MediaCopilot.ai. Okay, now back with the show. My conversation with Sara Beykpour of AI news app Particle. Sara, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thank you for having me, Pete. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm super glad you're here. I really need to take the temperature of AI news and AI news apps on phones and just generally, honestly. And I know Particle's been out for a little bit. I've been meaning to have you on and do this, but now that you've had a good chunk of runway and obviously a lot of feedback from your users, I think it's a great time to check in.
Awesome.
So why don't we start sort of at the fundamentals, though, because I don't know if all my listeners are familiar with Particle. Give us the 411 on what your mission is, how it came to be, and what you guys are doing now.
Yeah. So I'll start just kind of right at the top. My co-founder Marcel and I, we started Particle to make it easier for people to keep up with the news. Our little tagline is we want you to understand more faster, and we think that keeping up with the news is really exhausting. There's so much of it, and it's so disparate and disjointed, and the experience for people is also not great. And we thought there needs to be a better way. I think what's interesting is that AI has given us the tools to try and find a better way and really meet customers where they are. And where they are is that they're busy most of the time, too busy most of the time to really understand what's going on or keep up at all. And even if you do want to hunker down and figure out what's going on, Your options are to maybe read from a few news sources that you like, and then you get, one perspective, or you're at the mercy of social media algorithms that are feeding you God knows what. And there are aggregators and RSS feeds, but again, all of that just takes time. And I think for a lot of people, there needs to be a better way. So we built
Mhm.
Particle to kind of cut through a lot of that noise and provide you with the signal that you actually care about. So
Okay.
what does
Yeah.
particle actually do? So we
Mm.
read the news for you, and we summarize across many sources and group kind of like stories together, and present it all to you in a personalized feed that is specific to your preferences. And we help you kind of quickly get caught up and also decide if it's something that you want to go deeper into or just move on. And if it is something that you want to go deeper into, Particle acts like a map. So we act like a guide to show you the different parts of the story, to help you understand who's writing about it, how to get directly to those publishers and authors' websites. We'll pull out the kind of interesting things that you probably want to know, like primary quotes. So what did Trump actually say? What did Netanyahu actually say? Like bring that up. And
Mhm.
elevate that so that you're quickly connected to that primary source. Or
Mhm.
what are the popular links that are important? So if it's a movie trailer, like let's get you straight to that YouTube link, because like 9 times out of 10 that's what you really wanted to see. So
Right.
how can we like elevate some of that stuff for you, kind of feed it to you, so that again it's just like as little work for you as a consumer as possible. The other part of this, and I think the consumer experience is extremely important to us, and where I think as an industry we've been failing our users, making it easier for
Talking
them to
about
be
the
informed.
media industry or tech there, just in case.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Industries have been
Um,
failing their users.
Industries. Yeah. And I think that experience is really is often the difference between I'm going to be I'm going to give it a try and see what's going on, or I'm just not.
Mhm.
And But that the other part of this, of course, that I think also both industries are failing is the media, the publisher, and the journalist side.
Mhm.
And so we have a mission and a plan to um, do this in a way that we are in harmony with the publisher ecosystem, and develop new business models and figure out, is there a better way than the standard Google
Mm.
ads,
Yeah.
playbook that we've
I'd
been
love
doing
to
for a long time?
I really love to explore the business model aspect of it. I write about it a lot, but I also want to zero in on one of the things you mentioned there early on, which was social media, which I found interesting and perhaps slightly ironic because I know you and your co-founder come from Twitter. You'd spend a lot of time there, which
Yep.
obviously gives you a great perspective on news and real-time news. But the idea that social feeds don't really serve the user in at least the way that you would want to if you want to make them the best informed, I guess. And this actually is good we're talking now because just recently the Reuters Institute, they do their surveys and they have a quarterly report. It came out and it identified for the first time actually that social media, I believe, overtook everything else. It's now in the lead in terms of how people are getting their news. So, this is an interesting thing to double click on because I think there's I'd like you to tell me like what you think the failings are, but it seems to me one of them is just sort of the whole concept of filter bubbles. You kind of get a lot of reinforcement based on things you engage with, and it's one of the things, not the sole cause, but has certainly led to sort of alternate realities depending on your political affiliation or even aptitudes. And so what that um, I think your app may have, well, and AI in general may have some potential solutions to this. I'd love for you to first respond to that generally as to sort of the social media, the problems, and how you're addressing it, but also like the political issue of it specifically, because that seems to be one of the issues with our discourse. And I know also Particle has some features that try to address that.
Yeah. So in general, and as you mentioned, I spent over a decade at Twitter, thinking about how people get connected to what they care about, and the social media algorithms optimize for engagement, and that ultimately optimizes for clickbait, rage, reductive takes, things that really lack nuance. And all of the problems that you mentioned around like filter bubbles, echo chambers for sure, but also just misinformation. I mean, how many
Hmm.
times do you see, if you're using social media, a photo where you have to go to the comments to be like, no, that was a photo from 2014. Like, that's not relevant to, what's happening now. Like, and, for every time you look at the comment and see that, how many people didn't and are just
Right.
misinformed? And, I think X has done a pretty, like a really good job in terms of being an industry leader in with the community notes feature. Like that
Hmm.
was a feature that, we had been working on for a while prior to the acquisition of the new owner. But
Hmm.
it is something that he recognized that was like valuable. So community notes has been like a really interesting way to like have that fact check. Unfortunately, it's just like the coverage is just like not on. It's not on everything that's false. It's not on everything that needs more context. Where
Mm.
when it works great, but it's not enough. But to its credit, it is kind of like a step in a direction that was not taken before, and that's pretty cool. I
I
think
feel
that,
like you're about to say enter AI.
well, enter AI, and it just makes everything worse. We're in this weird, like, when we talked about AI, or when we generally talk about AI, we talk about this uncanny valley, right? Where it's like something is like so close to being human, but it's not human, and so it feels weird. Um, we've gotten on we're on this weird path now where we're on the other side of that,
Hmm.
where people don't trust human output anymore.
Interesting. Yeah,
Human
I hear
output,
what
if
you're
it
saying.
uses an M dash, people are like, oh, you use ChatGPT to write that. Like, even if you actually didn't. Um, I saw a photo on Threads the other day that I know was likely to be a real photo because I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were. Maybe I'd been at that place before or something like that. And, someone in the comments were like, that's AI. And I'm like, no, I don't think that one is AI, actually. I think that's a real photo. The mistrust now is going in every direction.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so that is also like an interesting problem that we're trying to see, and that's only going to get worse as AI gets better. People are going to distrust human content and think that it's generated. It's going to be
So
strange.
as you try to surface sort of the real information, as you sort of said before, and the things that people just want to get to, do you have some kind of fact checking layer or misinformation layer? I mean, you must. I mean, there's certainly ways you just simply set up the app in terms of what you're even looking at, I'm sure. But then how does AI help this problem that is also kind of in part caused by AI, right?
Yeah. So I think there's two categories of misinformation that could potentially show up on Particle. One is that Particle's use of AI has resulted in something incorrect, and so the way we approach that is we have a system and a pipeline that checks and rechecks the AI output against the source content to ensure that it is accurate according to the source content. And so we kind of reduce the surface area of hallucinations by doing this checking and rechecking process. It's
Nice.
also
Yeah.
it's the most expensive part of our process, and we don't use cheap models to do it, so that we are the likelihood that the output reflects the input is really high, and it's high enough that like it you can use Particle all day and not run into any issues.
Nice.
Occasionally we'll see like some fringe things that don't look right, and those get reported to us very quickly, and we'll just take them down. Um, the other category is that the source material is either incorrect or in conflict with each other.
Okay.
So in the case where the source material is in conflict, and since Particle launched about 7 months ago, we haven't seen like a major example of this. One example of this could be, for example, like just thinking about where we see conflicts with media reports is that, for example, there is a bomb that one country has issued to another country, and it says it hit a hospital, and then later on it gets retracted and saying like actually it wasn't a hospital, something like that.
Right.
So in
Yeah.
that case you'll have very respected, reputable outlets with conflicting information.
Hmm.
And so for us in those scenarios, it's important for us to make sure that we are favoring more recent reporting to kind of replace what was said before.
Hmm.
We try to be as transparent about that as possible. So every summary that you see in Particle on a story, you can look at the history of that summary. So if it got regenerated because new information was available, you can kind of see
Hmm.
the audit trail of like what the previous generation was and what the new generation is now. And we're working on how we productize that a little bit
Hmm.
more accessibly so that you can actually see it as like, oh, there was actually a material update to our understanding of this story. We thought, it was a hospital and it turns out it was not, something like that.
And this is something that would happen more or less automatically as like as part of the process. Like as new things are published around a topic that you have a summary for, that it's ingesting them, and on some cadence, it's refreshing that
That's
summary.
right.
Is that
Exactly.
fair? And
That all happens automatically.
as opposed to like the thing you identified before when there's a hallucination and it's a problem, that sounded like it was a more manual process. Like you would
That
have
is
sort
a,
of someone literally go in and correct it.
yes. So
Got it.
we see, and I can talk more about like what are the examples of that we see, but they're never like egregious errors. We're not saying that like, someone did something that they didn't or something like that.
That's
Uh
the fact checking stuff that you were talking about before. The
exactly.
fact checking
Exactly.
layers on to check hallucinations. But then with
Yeah.
the cadence, the regenerating thing that's trying to parse conflicting reports, that's
Right.
interesting. Obviously, yes, the bias to more recent information seems like a very good one. And
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
We haven't yet, since Particle has launched, had an example where two publications are just in direct conflict with each other continuously. So, for
Hmm.
example, maybe they're contesting the results of an election, or there's, I don't know, I can think of other examples there. We haven't seen that happen yet, and the way we hope we are able to, and I say hope just because it's
Hmm.
hypothetical at this point, that we're able to manage that situation if it were to rise, is to just be extremely explicit about who
Hmm.
is saying what. So according to publisher A, X has happened, and according to publisher Y, B has happened
Right.
or whatever. And that, just reflecting the reality of how something is being reported is how we want to handle that kind of misinformation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, there becomes a thing of what's commentary versus what's news. And um, I would imagine your mission is mostly the news part. But when you have a layer of interpretation on it from humans, you definitely get caught. Like, I mean, just thinking of one recent example is like, the so-called split in MAGA over doing this or versus that. I've heard commentators say it's sort of a big split in the party, and other ones say it's not a big deal. Who's right? I don't know. I don't really follow it that closely. But I don't know if people would go to Particle for some kind of definitive say either way. It's probably be more like, well, this is what people are saying about it, and you decide.
And I think this is what people are saying about it, and you decide is where Particle sits. Like we're going to go out and do the work of getting that information for you so that you don't have to search for it. And presenting it to you in a way that's like easily consumable. And then yes, and then you can make your own decisions. One of the interesting things about using AI to summarize across sources is the AI will uh, it will settle on the agreed upon facts between those sources. And so that commentary layer or that opinion layer is kind of like a separate, that doesn't usually show up in the summary unless it's
Right.
being like sourced and saying like these people say that this was infighting, and these other people are saying it's not infighting. We are really interested in bringing a layer of that commentary explicitly in the app in a section that is called out as like,
Mhm.
here's the commentary. Right now we have kind of a first stab at that where we do bring up the links I mentioned earlier. Like, if it's a trailer, a YouTube link will be there. If it is an argument on social media, on Truth Social, on X or whatever, those links to those posts will be easily accessible, or they are easily accessible in the link section. So you can kind of quickly see, what people have said. And as I mentioned before, we pull out quotes. So even if it wasn't said on social media, if it was said aloud, we will highlight those so that you can kind of quickly see that commentary.
Let me zoom out a layer or two and just maybe even get at a somewhat more fundamental question. First, how do you decide which sources to even look at and include?
Yeah, so we try to include sources. Like if I think about the U.S. specifically, because we are available internationally, we have international coverage as well. When I think about the U.S., we've tried to take a look at the political spectrum and make sure we're including things from all sides of the spectrum, but not too fringe. So you know, making sure that they have like reputable, credible reporting, and so we we use our own judgment to make those calls. We also have a journalist on staff who helps us with those kinds of judgments. But ultimately, we try to be fair and keep to high
And
quality
do you have a
publications.
number on that? Like
We do.
how many different what is it?
Not a number that I'm willing to share at this moment.
Well, but do you focus pretty much on national, state level, local? Like, how granular do you get in terms of your sources, in terms of, I guess, geography or even niche specialty?
All of the above, and we also do
Okay.
niche things. We also have entertainment, video games, food, you name it. We've got something there. And if you find that we're missing your niche, just shoot
Hmm.
me an email at saraparticle.news and I'll get something in for you.
And how do you think of the somewhat sensitive issue of like copyright and licensing? So there's, the whole internet, we're transitioning from search to AI. This is clearly somewhat painful for the media business. And there's the whole debate over AI summaries taking away clicks. There seems to be pretty definitive data now that that's the case. Certainly no end of legal actions that's continuing. You guys are a startup, and you're trying to do right by news consumers and news sources, it seems. But what is your approach there, and how do you think about the content that you're sort of ingesting, I guess, into your service?
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying that we do have several partnerships with publishers, and there's certain paywalled content that we have partnerships with those publishers to kind of get access to that stuff. Um, the industry is evolving. I think we are going through, and not just media, but also tech. I think we're going through a big change. It's unclear how everything is going to land. You mentioned all the things that are happening right now, and we're here. We're in this journey. We're on this ride. But our approach is that our philosophy ultimately is that if publishers don't succeed, then we don't succeed. And so we want to find a way that we can work together and make sure that the numbers work out. We're still pre-revenue, deliberately so. We have not monetized the app yet, and that is because we are focused on the user experience. If we don't have a user experience right now, or if we don't develop a user experience that a critical mass of people want to use, then what are we doing here? So we're really focused on that user experience and providing that user value, and we have a lot of great early indication that we're on the right track. The people who use the app, they tell us that they love it, all the time, and we're seeing good steady growth. Um, uh, but we do and will want to monetize, and we want to develop business models in this new world that are sustainable. So advertising is definitely an option to consider. It's not one that I'd like to consider first, because of the way that it affects the user experience, and we really want to have a wonderful user experience to meet users where they are. So it's on the table, but it's not one that I'm eager to get into.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure your audience probably isn't either. But I'm curious. You've been out for a while now. I think you said 7 months. I know you've got a Slack group because I'm actually in it, and
Oh,
I've
great!
I've,
Yeah.
I've been sort of keeping an eye on things. And I know you had the even when you were in beta. I think I was looking at some of the apps. So but you've certainly gotten a lot of feedback in the time that you've been out. What are you seeing in terms of how people are responding to features, particularly the AI features that you have? What are people like? Where do people want to see it See it go? How is this direct connection with your users helped you guys design the app?
Yeah, so we get a ton of feedback from our users. We get a lot of app reviews. We get tweets, we get messages on our community Slack, we get emails in. Um, for the most part, the feedback that we get, people love the app. People love how it saves them time. People love how it's designed. It's like a delightful experience, which is, something that we've really invested quite a bit in. And I think that's important because, you know, we're news exists. And so like already, and there are a lot of places to get it. And so if we're not providing an experience that is a step function above what you can get somewhere else, the switching cost of whatever you're doing before could be really high. And so it's really important for us to, really invest in that experience. The personalization is something that we hear a lot, that people appreciate how personalized the app is. When we originally launched, we had some issues on some of the personalization algorithms if you were a very heavy user. So you might say that, for example, you didn't want any sports, but if you were a very heavy user, the sports ended up like bleeding into your feed. And so we've continuously listened to that feedback and fixed up a lot of those holes that we had when
Hmm.
we first launched.
Do
So
you have a
people love
thing
the
where people
personalization.
can mark things and like see less of this, more of this, that kind of
Yes.
standard thing?
Yep.
Right.
And you can also go into, your settings and retune your preferences if you feel like it's gone awry. And you can also follow entities on the app. So any highlighted word, so maybe it's Apple or maybe it's, iPhone or iOS 26, you can be very specific about it. You can follow those so you can get more news about those things. And we see that people who do that retain in the app. Um,
Hmm.
um, at a much higher rate, I think, because it just it improves your experience and it starts to become really, really personalized. Um, we People love the quotes feature that I mentioned, how we elevate some of those primary sources right within the story. People love the carousel that
Hmm.
kind of groups sections together. I think the carousel is like a really interesting um, uh, kind of interesting and novel feature because people are pretty used to the standard newspaper sections like tech, politics, entertainment, and this starts to get a little bit more specific. So maybe it's like AI news, or maybe it's uh, like
Oh, I see.
uh,
It's almost like drilling down into sub verticals
yeah.
and
We, you can drill down into things that are much more specific. So maybe it's like the entertainment roundup or whatever, but um, the carousels are well they are well loved. We see that in the qualitative feedback and the quantitative data. So it actually inspired us to take that a step further. So there's a feature that we're working on right now that's only available in our beta called focus feeds that lets you use natural language to define exactly what you want a timeline of news to be
hmm.
about. So you now can take full control of that algorithm. So if you're interested in um, all autonomous vehicles, which a lot of people in where I live are, um, you could say, okay, I want a feed of autonomous vehicles. I want a news feed of autonomous vehicles, but I don't want to hear about Tesla because I'm
Right. Sure.
tired of hearing about Tesla. So you can actually create a feed that is that specific, where you'll get AV updates, but not about Tesla. You'll get them about GM and Mercedes and Zeus and whatever. And Another
Hmm.
one that
Interesting.
I have, which I find to be entertaining, is conservative disagreements. So it's only a feed of news when conservatives are disagreeing with each other. You could do the same on the Democrat or the liberal side too. But the point being is,
Okay. Yeah.
you can define exactly the algorithm of news that you want to see and take control of that. So that's something that we're is in development and in our beta. And if you have the beta, you can play around with that. That we're really
Nice.
excited about.
Yeah, yeah. That seems like a really cool kind of almost like a keyword feature. You get your own feed and updates, continual updates throughout the day. I love it. Um, yeah, I'm glad we're on features. I did want to ask you about sort of now that the media has sort of woken up to AI on multiple levels. It seems to me that a bunch of the at least bigger media players are now getting aggressive with their AI features. Time now has Time AI. There's the Washington Post has certainly famously done its own chat experience, and everyone seems to be experimenting with things like audio articles and summaries. Certainly, so give me your sense of like how is that pressuring you guys to sort of stay ahead? Like, I feel like as they do that, they're ebbing away at certain differentiators that you might have. Do you feel that pressure, and how do you think about the partners that you have also sort of competing with you? Which you again, it was sort of the same thing at the beginning, but it is like on a product sense they are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those explorations are really positive and exciting because the hope is that they'll stumble. I use the word stumble as if it's random. It's not random, but they will find use cases, really compelling use cases really compelling use cases that use AI that are going to be net positive and net beneficial for their users. And we want to know what those use cases are and see how we can meet those needs within our app as well. I think, as with a lot of new AI exploration, uh, product people and engineers and development, we're going to cast a wide net on things that we can do, and use that feedback to understand, well, okay, well, how much of this is solving a problem? How much of this was just cool and maybe made for a cool demo? And how much of this is actually something that our users want and is providing value to them? And obviously, as product people, we have hypotheses of like, this is going to be valuable to people. But you have to build and launch those things to really find out what that response is going to be, and that is the beauty of consumer and consumer development. And ultimately, the things that are going to really work here and not just kind of be cool demos are the things that provide value to users, whether or not that makes use of AI or leverages AI or not. So, you know, having an ecosystem where people are using these new tools to find new valuable use cases for consumers is exciting to me. And I encourage publishers to figure out, like, how can they better serve their readers. We think that Particle, we have a lot of experience with consumer development and building for our users on the team. I think one of the things that makes it interesting is that we do sit as an aggregator on
Hmm.
top of many different voices. So there's going to be some cool features on some of these individual publishers, and that's great. But we also want to provide an easy way for people to get multiple perspectives, which
Hmm.
we think is really, really important for the just general health and health of information in the country.
So, as a news aggregator, you certainly follow in sort of the footsteps of a lot of other apps. And my friend Brian Morrissey sort of always would like to talk about news aggregator apps as um, kind of a kind of almost like a fool's errand, I guess. He might have used a different language, but there just seems like there's a lot that I used to use. Obviously, as a news person, I keep up all the time. A lot of the apps I was using 5 to 10 years ago don't exist anymore, but some do, and there have been success stories. I mean, notably Flipboard. I think you might point to that. There's probably others I'm not thinking of. Oh, there's Smart News. There's
Mhm.
a few others that exist out there. Um, but one that has not survived, and this is not necessarily a reflection on the app's idea itself, was Artifact, and it was
Mhm.
notably the first like one that marketed itself as an AI first news aggregator. So first, I'd love you to reflect on Artifact a bit and what you might have learned as an observer of what that app had to offer and how people reacted to it and what happened. And then just broadly on the idea of news aggregators in general, like how uh, or why, I guess, with AI, the dawn of AI, this is sort of a unique time and perhaps a better time for the opportunity in that field?
This is a great question. I think I think that all of the news aggregators, and I use all of the ones that you mentioned, um, are not actually aggregating.
Hmm.
They are collecting, but they aren't actually aggregating in the way that Particle is aggregating. Particle is a true aggregator in that it is taking multiple sources and actually aggregating them into a story. Not just here is the menu of things about this, or here's the one article that we chose to represent this story, which some aggregators do. We are actually aggregating across so that when you read a particle story, it is the summation. It is a um, distillation of multiple perspectives, and what we end up seeing is that, like, the agreed upon facts across all of those sources are what come through in the summary. So it's a true aggregation, and when you interact with the story, you can ask it questions and all of that. You're interacting with like I said, like a true aggregation of news content. So it goes kind of a step further than just kind of collecting articles from various sources. Artifact, and I think they built something really beautiful and really usable. And all my respect to Kevin and Mikey for doing that. And I've talked to Mikey a few times about, when we started building Particle, about, his experience with Artifact and all of that. They were AI first in that they were using, embeddings to understand the similarity between stories, which is, I don't think something had ever, something that other companies or teams have ever really done before for a news app. But they were a little bit before the LLM, the generative
Mm.
AI part of AI. And Particle started in February 2023, so ChatGPT had been out for 3 or 4 months at that time, and we have integrated generative AI up and down our stack. We have internal tools that manage the prompts and the pipelines and everything that come with it, that we had to build in those early days. Now there's, like, a dozen companies that'll do that for you, but we had to build
Mhm.
in those early days because that didn't exist. And AI is integrated in every single part of our system. So Artifact is probably true to say that they were AI first, but we were generative AI first.
Mm.
Um, as to what happened there, I mean, I think only Kevin and Mikey will really know why they made the decision that they did. So I can't speak to that, but they I think they built something beautiful that people loved, and we've heard a lot of our users, especially in the early days, that downloaded Particle for the first time, saying that, like, they were looking for a replacement for Artifact,
Mm.
and that Particle has now become that for them. So that, to me, is that's validating that we're meeting that use case that they were going after.
It did feel like some of the stuff they were doing was pretty cool and groundbreaking with news summaries at the time. Now I feel like that's a feature. There were other stuff that was a little bit gimmicky, I thought, with like the celebrity voices and stuff. I've no hate to anyone who does that. Maybe that's a feature that people, I don't know. Do you, I actually, I don't even know. Does Particle do that? I imagine not, but
No.
it does seem like more of a gimmicky thing. Um, to have, I think of even a Gwyneth Paltrow a voice that was literally like licensed from her. That
I
so
mean, it's cool that they have that access.
uh,
I'm sure we would kill to have even a fraction of that kind of access. But the thing about consumer is, and I'm sure Mikey and Kevin, they've built the most successful consumer app, possibly of all time,
of
maybe only
course.
to be surpassed by ChatGPT. But um, you kind of just have to try stuff, and sometimes things hit, and sometimes they
Mhm.
feel like how you feel about it, and it feels like maybe a little cringy or whatever. But it's hard to tell. Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta have some conviction and try some things.
Well, to the point though of like audio being a part of Gen AI and our experience with it, I think that was definitely ahead of its time. And now we're seeing that with Notebook LM and all the voice features that I mentioned earlier from all these apps. It does seem like integrating voice with not just news aggregators or news from AI, but AI in general is a step that we're kind of in the middle of that we're already taking. So that's definitely the future. But speaking of the future, just to wrap up here, Future of Particle, there's a lot of talk about news agents and what those might look like, where when we have an internet of agents and things are just going out and bringing news back to us. It sort of seems like Particles well on its way to sort of being that. Maybe you think of it as that. I don't know. There's other news apps coming out that sort of seem to do either that or, but I'm thinking specifically of like Nomi, which you might have heard of. I don't know if too many people know it yet because it's very new. But it sells itself, at least markets itself, as a news agent, and will essentially create those custom feeds that I think you were sort of talking about with respect to sort of media niches. Anyway, what is the future of Particle given all this landscape, the progress of AI, and that everyone's prediction that agents, people that will just not people, robots that will just surf the red net for you and find news for you and bring it back to you. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about it in the framing of agents. I mean, what is an agent really? Is it the difference between an agent and something like Particle is that maybe the work happened before you opened it versus like you telling it to do the work? I don't know if
Right.
that's the delineation, but I think the idea of the content, there's this new phrase that's come up recently, or at least I only heard about it more recently, called liquid content, which is the idea that like the content changes for you.
Right. Sure.
And so the sources might be the same, but it's transformed in a way that you want it. And I think we're going to see more and more of that becoming prevalent. And that just, ties back into, again, meeting users and readers where they are. So that means that if you don't have time to read a 10-minute piece, but you really wanted to know what was said in there, you can get it in a 3-minute format, or you can get it in an
Mm,
audio format, or you can get it in Hindi, or you can, and it transforms, or you can get it rewritten assuming you know nothing about the topic, or get it rewritten assuming you are an expert in that topic. So like really go into that, nuance. So the idea that the content can be more liquid to be hyper personalized to your needs is something that I think we'll see more of, and that's definitely an area that Particle is thinking about. And the idea of focused feeds is also in that vein, like taking control, putting the user in control of the algorithm, and what they want to see, and having that hyper personalization. We're also if I can just talk about a couple of things that are on the horizon, we're working on a game,
oh,
because you can't
okay.
be a publisher, or you can't be a
Yeah,
serious
got a
news app
game
without a
strategy.
game. Got to have a game strategy. So we actually have a mini crossword in our beta right now, which we're hopefully launching soon. And it uses a combination of AI and human editing to generate, and it's seated and themed on like the day's news, basically. So we're very excited about taking maybe a fresh spin on a beloved classic.
Nice. I can't wait to try that out. Getting a little playful in the app. I think we're going to have to leave it there. But Sarah, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time and telling us all about what you're up to at Particle.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Pete.
Take care. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Sara Beykpour of Particle. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it if you'd take just a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out mediacopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, PR professionals, and communicators. Seeing you in the future.